up a seat at the bar to join us for another episode of McAnally's Pubcast, a podcast exploring the fun and fantastical mind of Jim Butcher's The Dresden Files series. Hosts Tansenn, Maggie, and me bring you another round of literary analysis on this immense, immersive, and colorful environment inhabited by Harry Dresden, the world's only licensed private investigator and professional wizard. Join an active and engaged community of new and die-hard dedicated fans focused on the fabulous themes, theories, characters, context, lore, and more. This is McAnally's Dresden Files Pubcast by Free Flow Rambling. Conjure by it at your own risk.
Welcome to the McAnally's Pubcast, brought to you by Free Flow Rambling. This is episode 9.6, Repercussions, where we are covering the novel Summer Night. My name is Tansenn, and I'm joined by Maggie.
Hello, hello.
And Jess.
Romeo.
Thank you to our Patreon subscribers for your generous support. It's people like you who help us do what we do. If you're not yet a Patreon subscriber, sign up today and get a fuck ton of bonus content, kick-ass merch, behind-the-scenes outtakes, and more. Sign up today at patreon.com/freeflowrambling. Chapter 7. Dresden leaves the council meeting and heads to Murphy's for more information. The two have a heart-to-heart conversation, and Dresden realizes Murphy is not in a good place. Murphy provides information to the Rule case with the agreement that she will be included in the case if it turns out to be a murder. Dresden returns to his apartment and finds a very alive Elaine in his home.
What? Fish! So yeah, that pretty much sums it up. He's like, yeah, the rest of the meeting was pretty anticlimactic, at least for me. It's like, how are you going to
stop talking about me, so
I was done. I was like, can I go now? Yeah, exactly.
I love that when Dresden takes his leave and he's quite in a huff. This blue beetle, behold the angry wizard putting away.
All the power of the ancient four-cylinder could muster. I know, because he's like, Ebenezer's like trying to cat, and he's like, I just don't want to talk to anybody. I'm just like, over all of it. And he's like, yeah,
in his bathrobe still.
In his bathrobe.
Keeping it classy, Dresden, keeping it classy.
Right. So yeah, his brain feels like something made out of stale cereal, coffee grounds, and cold pizza.
Gives himself a pep talk, which I really like. Mm-hmm. Same pep talk I give myself pretty much every day. Get over it, idiot.
Yeah.
And then he drives to Murphy's.
I like that he gives himself pep talks like that. Like, yeah.
Everything does suck, but too bad.
Just, you can do it, you can do it.
It's not this one, but I know there's one where either something very traumatic has just happened or he's giving himself one of these pep talks. And he like glances over and there's some like little old lady watching him like rant in his car and he's like, ha ha. And I'm like, I just like to think most of these things, somebody's probably driving beside this guy and is especially because he's like, I haven't showered, I haven't shaved or combed my hair.
What the fuck is wrong with this guy?
Sitting there muttering to himself as he putts along in his
at that time frame, there wouldn't be many cell phones around either, so there's like,
no, that's really
you'd just be talking to yourself. There's no excuses here.
Exactly right. No earpiece that you just don't see. It's just crazy guy.
Yeah. So we get once he gets to Murphy's, we get the sort of Butcher puts in an SI review blurb. So we get our review.
Of yes, what SI's purpose is and Murphy's
Coal notes?
role within this. Yeah.
Just in case you forgot, this is what SI is.
Yeah. Most people can't accept that they're dealing with genuine weirdness, so they usually get shuffled out. But Murphy hadn't. She hired the guess who? Only professional consultant and her only professional wizard to be your consultant and stuff. So, yeah.
And we find out this is the first time he's been to Murphy's house, too. So he knows where she lives and everything, which is kind of cool. Because I'm like, I don't know where most of my friends live if I haven't been to their house before. That's usually how I find out where they live.
Private detective. Yeah.
Right? It's like it's on his paperwork somewhere.
Yeah.
He just, no. I mean, again, it's not like that weird, but it was just kind of funny. I was just like, oh, this is because he's like, he knows exactly where to go. He gets there and just like, by the way, I've never been in here before. It's really cute. It's Grandma's house, and she obviously hasn't changed anything except for her gun cleaning kit and the swords.
Well, and they find out, like, she's got this place just solidly built up. Like, she's got, like, lots of bolts and chains. Like, he can hear, like, the click.
Yeah, like the 15 locks being
and it's a steel reinforced door. Like,
yeah, he's like, oh, I noticed she has the same one I do, although I doubt not as many demons have been breaking it down. But Murphy's just like,
better
no,
safe than
I'm
sorry.
Yep.
right. Murphy's like, I can learn from other people's mistakes. I don't need them to be my own.
See, that's funny. I just saw a tweet the other day, and it was like, I've never learned from anyone else's mistakes ever. Stop telling me things. I'm like, that's a good point. Same. I also don't care about other people's mistakes.
So yeah, she's got this very sweet, very nice, and then she still doesn't. So he's kind of surprised that she's still up, but like I think the light's still on or whatever. So he goes ahead and knocks on the door. So he says it's not like it's before midnight, but it's after summertime dark, which pretty much. I mean, I don't know about Chicago how different it is, but from here, that's like between 11 and midnight. There's not a big like we basically get dark between like 10 and 11 is when like the last of our sunlight is fading out of the sky, kind of a thing. So. I know Chicago's a little bit more east than us,
they're more east,
maybe
so that's probably
it gets
sooner.
a little darker sooner, but yeah, point being is it's fairly late, so, but anyways,
and
still
she
just
opens the door. She is looking pretty rough.
Yeah, it's not his usual Murphy that he's expecting. She's just in a bathrobe.
She's got bags under her eyes.
Hey, same outfit.
She greets him with a gun.
Yeah, and he's like, hey, Murph.
So she starts by testing him by not inviting him in.
Yeah,
Which I was just gonna say, I was like, last book, Harry was going around being like, don't invite my face in, and then he goes to Murphy, he's like, hey Murph, can I come in? So I'm glad that Murphy's like, no, you can't.
it is. It's very and it's the way he does it too. He's like, so can I come in? And she just goes, we'll find out in a minute, won't we? He's like, ooh.
Ah,
So
you've
he's
been
like
paying attention.
He's like, all right, props to you, Murph.
That's my girl.
That's my girl.
Yeah.
So now this is where he makes an interesting line, and I'm wondering if it's just because he's like, so that's what and this is again going off of, because again, I have been re-listening to Marsters read it and stuff like that, right? So I'm like, is it just his interpretation? I think that's what it is. It's the interpretation, maybe take off it. So he's like, he crosses uninvited, he mostly leaves everything behind or whatever, but he says here, he's like, where is it? He basically is like, so that's what a threshold, he's like, I stepped across the threshold, something tugged at me as I did, an intangible, invisible energy. It slowed me down a little, and I had to make an effort to push through it. That's what a threshold is like. And the way Marsters read it, he's kind of like, that's what a threshold is like. And I'm like, well, he already knows.
We've described thresholds many times before.
He has, but I mean,
he knows.
But him actually going through them, right? But I was like, well, but he went into Monica's, because that was the thing. Monica's like, you can't come in, and he's like, good. And pushes, right? So I'm thinking this is more just one of those little flips, because you're right here, just in this paragraph, the way it is, there's no particular. So I think it's more of him explaining just that's what a threshold feels like. If I could feel it tugging, I could feel it. Whereas, like I say,
James
sort of,
Marsters gave the wrong inflection.
I think he just gave the wrong inflection and stuff like that. So I just hear it, and I'm like, it's just the way he says it. And I'm like,
That's what a
that's
threshold.
what, and I'm like, yeah,
That's
like,
what it is.
maybe if you've never gone through, I mean, again, most of the time, because like last book when he goes, he wants Mrs. Malone to invite him in, because he's like, it's polite.
Yeah, and he needs his powers.
And he's like, I do need my powers in this case, but also it's just generally a thing. I try not to go or I'm not one, blah, blah, blah. And then again, but he was making the point with like Monica and all that. I was like, no, we know at least once he specifically said fuck you and went through a threshold.
Yeah.
So I was like, but it was just kind of funny, because just like say sometimes listening to it, it just makes you go, wait, what? And then you're like, oh, now that I'm looking at it on paper, I was like, yeah, I don't think that was really but yeah, it was sort of funny. I'm like, So does that, goes ahead, willingly leaves all his mojo, because he's not there to do anything. He's just there for some things, and Murphy needs that, and he discovers Murphy maybe needs a lot more than just that, or why she needed that. So
We know after Grave Peril that Murphy and Michael really took up the arms to go and comfort him and take care of him.
that is true as
But
well.
it seems
and that
like-
is a really interesting point right here too, because you just see a little, we just sort of get his wrap
Yeah.
up at the end of it, and then now we're jumping in here. But it's like, you know what? You're right for a second there. I had forgotten that Murphy and Michael, like, specifically were like,
They were putting in the time and effort to come and check
checking
on him, and they were bringing him
Are
groceries
you
and cleaning up his
eating?
place.
Are
And
you Yeah,
given him that social
exactly.
aspect. But it seems now a little of the reverse. Harry should have been. Well, not necessarily should have been. He was going through some shit. But
was
Murphy
going-
clearly also needed a little bit of TLC
once
as well.
he sort of got back on his feet to the point where they obviously didn't feel the same need to check in on him consistently.
Murphy let herself fall.
He's still far enough in his own shit and whatever that, he sort of hasn't taken the time to realize that, Murphy's still not doing real well and hasn't bounced back completely.
Took a bit of a psychic beating, and that shit
Just a wee bit.
gets worse over time.
Not
sometimes.
better. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, I'm jumping ahead just a little bit. Like, I think that Murphy is a character because she apologizes for having a breakdown, that she would actively hide it from Dresden
Also,
to
there
maintain
is
that
very-
sort
oh,
of
also
professionalism.
true. There is
and that
absolutely
she's
that as
in
well,
control.
yes.
Like, she just loves to keep that control.
Yeah, had he been
Yes.
here at like 4 p.m., probably wouldn't have seen this.
Exactly, and she does. I mean, he, she sort of says it, I think, somewhere in here, but he definitely Murphy's always had to fight and claw her way in this boys' club of a cop's profession, right? Much as there's a lot of women in that profession now, Murphy's still not taken as seriously. And again, why she's in SI, like, we know she's a badass in SI. That's a great place for her to be, and she does a kick-ass job. But as he stated,
SI's demotion.
SI's basically, they're hoping you will just fuck up and go away. That's where they shuffle people out to either ignore you and never have to deal with you, or
Drive you to
even
quit.
better, usually get rid of you 100% completely, right? So that's the thing, right? So yeah, Murphy is like, because he says, it's like, he always has her with the short hair and the things like this, and it's like, not necessarily her choice. Like, every once in a while, he would say, like, she wears it shorter than she might like to, because she doesn't want to be seen as some little girly girl, like, she can't make herself taller, she can't make herself, whatever, but she does these things, she wears pantsuits instead of dresses, and she cuts her hair sort of shorter so she's more tomboyish rather than too feminine and girly, and, doesn't wear a lot of jewelry and all this kind of stuff. So yes,
it's such a duality in a ways, because like, and even just to the description of her house, because her house is considered very cute. And like with doilies, which I
lacy
think
bits
is
of frou-frou.
pretty dated. I think the last time I've seen a doily was when I was like 7.
Oh, come over.
At my grandma's.
Specifically living in grandma's
Well,
home.
she just became a great grandma for the first time, so at 76, I will let her still have some doilies.
Right. So you've got this sort of cute and decorate, like very girly frou-frou decorated house, and then her additions are a Japanese sword, like this very opposite.
Yeah, the long and short cross swords.
Yeah.
And her gun cleaning kit.
Yes, and I think that like sort of reinforces this
It does. I think
sort of really drastic.
I think this gives it to us on a couple of levels, because one, right, just what he's saying about the threshold. So I was like, that's part of it, is that Grandma Murphy left Karen her house. So
it's a very well-established home.
it's a well-established, so Grandma at least raised her house, and her grandkids obviously have been around well enough for her to leave it. So who knows
If it was in the family
how much
before that.
longer before, but let's give it, 100-ish years at that
least
point.
3 generations, though.
Right? So that's established that way. And the fact that, we don't really know it yet, and we don't know about her extended family, but Karen is the oldest in her family in that. So, okay, makes sense, Grandma left it to her or whatever, right? But that's the thing, is that I see it in a couple of different ways. One, Murphy doesn't really have the time, or Murphy's a cop. She's young. She's busy and she's like literally hanging on by her, the nails and her teeth and whatever to keep this job and do well and succeed and not let the boys' club
She
and
doesn't
the
have time to
assholes
redecorate
and
a
the-
house.
She doesn't have the time or interest really, and it's also to me a little bit of like, this is my grandma. This is the
Yeah, I
house
don't wanna
grew up
ruin
in.
it.
Like, I don't need to get rid of all of Grandma's stuff yet. It's all here. It's functional. Whatever. I just, she obviously still just basically moved into it furnished and didn't, and things like that. And so I kind of, to me, it's on like a few levels kind of a thing of why. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure if she really absolutely hated it, Murphy was absolutely none of that, she wouldn't still have things like, fine, maybe the furniture, who wants to go out and buy a bunch of furniture if you don't have to, but would she keep all the little frou-frous and knickknacks and doilies, at least that kind of stuff, right? So, like, I think it's all kind of, it's like, she is girly enough to appreciate that, and I think it's a little bit of an homage. Like, I don't want to get rid of all Grandma's stuff. This is my childhood and my stuff, too. And
Well, and I think it's a little bit of a thematic thing, because we quite frequently hear her description as cute but fierce.
yes.
Which is like, okay, doilies and Japanese sword, cute and fierce.
Fair enough, yep.
We don't hear that description until a few books later, and then we all use it really consistently. But it basically boils down to that. Yes, he's always describing her. Yeah, exactly as like a favorite aunt or a soccer mom, or basically exactly cute but fierce. And this is precisely what her house is.
Yep.
Dare I say cute? Not to her face, but I will to you, dear readers. Murphy's house is cute.
Yeah, totally.
I'm dead, she's dead, somebody's dead
As
if
a
you're all
button.
reading this. Yeah, right. Like your little button nose. So, yes, right. And then, I think you're right. A lot of this is that, Murphy would not want to show. I mean, even in this conversation, he pretends to go over and look at the swords. So, she doesn't have to, he can pretend he doesn't know she's crying, or she can pretend that he doesn't know that she's crying, or, and stuff like that, right? So, for sure she would have hit it, but you're still just a little bit of you is like, because he talks about himself. He's like, right at the end of Grave Peril, he's like, I had nightmares for a while, so it was like, well, and again, as you're saying.
She ended up in a coma because of her attack.
Yeah, I was going to say, you specifically know, right? You put her in a coma because you knew that
The nightmares were so bad.
The nightmares were so bad, and what he would have, in theory, what he did to her, right? What was going on, right? So you're like, I'm going to knock her out so she's dreamless. And again, it's like, once you started coming back to yourself, it's like, it's really kind of funny that you didn't go, hey, wait a minute, how the fuck is Murphy dealing with all of this, And like, even Charity, well, Charity's got Michael and her kids and things like that. So I'm like, we know that Charity and Michael are a good couple. We know if she's
taken care of.
If she needed to talk about shit, she was going to talk about shit with Michael and whatever, right? She's got her face, she can go to church, she can talk to her priest, she can do, right?
She's got a good support system.
She's got a good support system.
Murphy is alone.
Yeah, she's very isolated.
And Charity, again, is Charity is confident enough in her masculinity, that whole sort of idea that she wouldn't be afraid. She knows when to ask for help. And when
Charity's
to lean on
identity
things.
isn't under attack every day.
Yeah, whereas Murphy's is exactly so. Yeah.
And on top of that, like, we'll learn that, Murphy doesn't have the best relationship with her family either. So she's, like, she doesn't even have from that angle.
Right. But I gotta say, I really, really appreciated this chapter. Like, I think this is, the first opportunity that Butcher has given the reader to really empathize with Murphy's character. Yeah. Because before then, it's kind of like she's just this hard-ass cop. And it's
you just see her at work.
Yeah, she's like towing the line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always getting mad at Dresden. But now
it's just whenever there are button lines on the job, or button heads on the job, when those lines cross. Yeah.
Yeah. It really humanizes her a lot in this chapter. Like, you get background history, and you find out how vulnerable she is.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you've seen bits of their friendship, and you've seen almost interactions outside of work, but it's still always kind of work-related somehow, whereas this is, this is work-related.
It's going to turn it,
But exactly, right? He's coming to her house for the first time, which is also a first for him and not just for us, right? And we're seeing how she lives, and we're seeing exactly so much more of her inner personality and who she is and what she is, as opposed to just, she's a cop. It's like, oh, Murphy has a life, Murphy's a person.
She's a person, exactly. Aww. So on top of, this being late night, it being months of hard nights, we find out that today is especially hard for Murphy because her first husband has died.
Her first husband.
Her ex-husband now, but her first husband has now just died.
Yeah. And it kind of makes reminiscent. Because I know at first I was kind of like, well, I get you kind of being upset, but I mean, no offense out there. I don't think I'm going to be I'm not going to be mourning like this when my first husband passed away.
That's my father. So
yeah, no offense, Jess, but I don't think that comes as any shock to you.
Still my father.
But I get that, yes.
He's going to die and I'm going to be like, woo, champagne, and we'll be like children, like,
well, I might not do that in front of you.
But we know you'll be doing it.
It may or may not happen, but I wouldn't do that directly in front of you at the time. But no, right? Things did not end that well with us. And I understand that, yes, some people, for whatever reasons, their relationship... I have exes I am friends with. Whatever. It can... But we find out that he left her ultimately in the end, right? So it's like, okay, I can understand then that she was the one, she wasn't necessarily looking for that relationship. And she may have come to a place of acceptance at some point on why and
she
how.
Was really young when she did it. Like, this is probably like her first love. Like
right? Guaranteed.
She was 17, right? Like,
and I'm surprised that he goes that, because he's like, she looks really young. He's like, she couldn't have been more than 18. And he's like, 18? And she just shakes her head. I would have gone, 19? Yeah. He immediately goes, 17? Like, I was like, wow. Like, and I'm like, I get it. Again, it hasn't really been stated yet. And I'm, whether or not you're automatically assume, but Karen Murphy is an Irish Catholic. And that is still important in her family and that, right? So I was like, I guess I can kind of, but again, I'm still a little bit surprised that Mama Murphy was willing to marry you off at 17, you know, because you do still need actual permission at that point. It's like when I worked at the liquor store and it was like, must be accompanied by a parent or spouse. And I'm like, oh, that's just wrong. Parents, I understand. If you're still a minor, you should not have a spouse to accompany you to the liquor store. I mean, I get that, yeah, fine, you could be 18, 19, 20 in the U.S. and technically you're still a minor, but here it's 18, so it just seems wrong.
You know, everything here is 18, so it's
yeah, everything is 18. Voting, drinking, gambling, so it was just like... So, yeah, so she was just a wee itty-bitty baby. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, so she is pretty shaken up about this because, you know, and again, and I mean, again, you can say a different era, but really Murphy is in around-ish my age, her and Harry for, you know... At the start of it, before the timeline gets all messed around with how long it takes to write a book and how fast things actually happen. But, you know, I was like, everyone thought I was real young to, you know, get married and have kids. And I was like, at least we were the same age, though, right? I'm like, he's looking at the picture and he figures this guy's about a decade older. So I was like, she was 17. So this guy's like 26, 27 with his 17-year-old girlfriend. And Mama Murphy let you get married and go. And we know it wasn't a shotgun wedding because Murphy didn't have any kids. So, you know, it was just like, I get it, but I'm like, yeah, my parents' generation, I could almost say, okay, sure. But for me, I'm like, I don't know, Murph, this is like kind of straddling both sides of the really conservative Catholic family and the, okay, yes, just go get married and have babies Catholic family, you know. I'm just like, I'm not quite sure which side y'all fall on, but it just doesn't seem quite right either way. Like, so.
Oh, those crazy Catholics.
Oh, those crazy Catholics. Oh, those Russians.
Right. So there's this part where Dresden tries to tell her that he knows how she feels.
Oh, do you? Oh, do you really? Yeah. Did you lose your first love?
Which, in one way, I really appreciate how this develops the backstory for both characters at this point in time. Like, it's a really great way to get those details out there. However... It also strikes me that Dresden really doesn't know how to support his friends very well. Because, like, I kind of feel like as a general rule, telling somebody you know how they feel and bringing yourself into their, like, instead of listening.
I love and
like,
hate this scene.
Let me tell you about my experiences because I don't actually want to listen to your problems, is what that tells me.
Or you think that's bad? Well, he just had cancer and died. I killed mine. So,
right,
yeah, my pain's a little harsher than your pain.
Right. It doesn't validate.
Yeah, not only do I know, I actually create.
It's a little bit of the conundrum between, like, trying to connect with someone versus one-upping them.
Yeah.
And there's a line, and sometimes it can be hard to navigate, but sometimes it's like, just shut up. Like
the Buffy and Willow, and she's like, "Oh, way to like support me or whatever," and she's like, "Oh, is this a commiserating speech?" She's like, "I thought this was a feel my pains me or whatever." I forget exactly how she puts it. I'm gonna have to check. But yeah, it was like her and Willow, and it was like I'm looking for like sympathy and support, not like, "Oh, you know what happened to me." It was like, "Oh, wait, we're having that conversation. My bad." You know.
I mean, it was a really great way to get the details out because you don't know that much about Elaine at this point.
Yeah, it's a good transition into Harry's stuff, but actually, we're not supposed to be on Harry's stuff right now.
Yeah.
Be a good friend to Murphy.
Right.
Yeah.
Just listen to your friend, man.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why I love and hate, because like you say, I do enjoy getting the backstory on Murphy. I do enjoy, like, one more thing for them to bond over, or connect over, or, you know, having... But at the same time, I'm like, it does feel slightly forced to me. Because, you know, it's like, well, we've had this mentioned before, but now all the, like, again, right, so I was like, I get, you had to get this in here, Butcher, but, you know, to me, I can't help but looking at it a little bit like, so, okay, he had back in book 1 or whatever, is she mentions that she's got, my first ex-husband, if not, you know, that she's got more than one or whatever. So we know that there's that, right? But I was like, did you always sort of plan that this was Murphy's route of being, you know, or did you somehow, you know, is this a little bit of a plot device to get to Dresden's like, okay, well, how can we make it kind of heart-wrenching? And, well, let's see, if she got married at 17, that's going to be like and now he's dead. Well, they were a couple at 16 and now she's dead, you know. It was like, is this sort of the natural progression where you always
saw? They both have young love
They both had young love with ending in death or, you know, whatever and stuff like that, right? And it's the same thing, especially knowing, like you say, that at the end of the chapter, oh, lo and behold, this woman we've been told that's been dead for the last 4 books and the last decade in real life is all of a sudden, you know what I mean? I'm like, it just almost feels slightly too contrived to me. And I'm like, it's cool that Elaine is back and it's cool, but I was like, there's always been something that just bugged me slightly. I'm like, it's not as bad as some. Like, that's what I hate sometimes about, like, when you get into,
Once Upon a Time?
No, I was going to say bad example, and I haven't watched the show, but the first thing that comes to mind is, like, Young Sheldon. Okay, I like The Big Bang Theory. I watched a bunch of that. I have not seen every episode from season 1 to the end or whatever. I'm missing a bunch of the last stuff. But basically, it's one of those things that, you know, they met in college or this or that. Now, I know that there's the Young Sheldon show, and I know there's been, you know, like, I know I read something somewhere where, like, I don't know if they actually know each other. There's, like, a passing moment where, like, Leonard and Penny have seen each other, or Sheldon and Penny, you know. So I'm like, I'm going to assume, I have a feeling that, like, Howard and them have made, right? I'm like, so it's funny, you can go back and do that with the kids show, but it's like, really in the show, none of them met. There is no Young Sheldon with Howard and Raj and Leonard, because none of them actually met until they were...
College.
Yeah, grown up in it, right? Yeah. So I'm like, it's cutesy, and I get you want to include all of the characters, but I'm like, really, that's totally retconning the whole thing, because it never happened, and you know it's a force, because, like, well, we know they all know each other, so I'm just going to put him in the background, and, oh, look, that's going to be Howard, and you're like, well, really, that never would have happened, and, you know, so I'm like, I just don't know if it's kind of one of those. Sometimes, like, it's early enough in the books that it could have sort of been some of the natural, but it's
touching
also,
on what's
like,
planned and what came up.
What planned and what's came up and how much is, and, yeah, I was like, that's kind of why it's just like,
oh, that's what I was saying about Once Upon a Time, that was,
convenient.
They had so many ideas. It's like they kind of gave up on, like, continuity or actually, like, just letting a story play out. They're just like, we have 45 episode ideas.
Every single person is related to another.
Well, yeah, like, we have 45 episode ideas, but we've only been renewed for 20 episodes. We're fitting all 45 into 20, and it's like, just, like, let someone just have a minute. Like, not every character has to be related to every other character. Like, just let this character have a thing for a second,
it was
you know?
fun for the first season, but it didn't need to keep going
exactly. Like, the first season or two were really good. Like, the ties that everyone had to each other seemed like a genuinely good, like I said, like, the Dresden Files, like, threshold. Like, some people having multiple thresholds seem like a really, like, yeah, it does make sense that they're the same person or whatever, blah, 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 right?
Mantles, you mean, not thresholds?
Well, yes, okay. Yeah, mantles. But it got to a point where it's just like, it seems really cheap that this person is just also that person now. Like, can you just, like, just get a new person? Or stop bringing in people and use it? Like, I don't know, it's just...
Yeah.
We've spoken about it in our Discord, how much we hate how Once Upon a Time developed. But yeah, it just turned into bullshit.
It starts with something so great, and then you're just like...
But yes, this scene, as much as I do, I don't really love Elaine. I would have been happy if she never came back to the books, but I'm sure one day she'll be important and make sense for why she came back. But anyways, it's just not important enough for me in this book. Any old chick could have done it.
Well... Yes and no. I mean, in some ways, I like Elaine's role in this, and there is some sort of interesting bits and pieces, but at the same time...
But his whole chivalry, I'll save any woman for any reason, would have worked fine with any old girl. It didn't need to be Elaine.
It almost...
But anyways, my point is that it could have been nice to just not have... I mean, it's funny to say, but it's like almost if, like, the plot hadn't developed here, and it was just a nice thing between Harry and Murphy, you know?
Yeah.
Without it needing to be anything more.
Without it,
could have been nice, you know?
Needing to come back to Harry and move his plot along the same
nice minute.
way.
Even if you only have so many words, you could have just ended out the night with, like... Because I stayed the night and talked with Murph about her husband. Done.
Yeah, I was gonna say, even with the rest of it, like with the drugs and the alcohol and I'm like, that still all plays back to like the whole Kravos thing. So I was like, you could have had just this moment of this being just kind of like an extra gut punch. And like you say, not only would it, because, you know, she's like, he never even told me he was sick, you know. And I'm like, I get that stinging if you had, you know, because she's like, we tried to talk and we'd end up, right? So again, Murphy was like, would have liked to have salvaged something, would have at least liked to have sort of been on some kind of a friendly basis with him. Didn't work out, she was too young, whatever the case, right? But exactly the fact that, like, even later in life, he couldn't have, reached out. Or somebody, like, send her a Facebook or something, I don't know, right? But, right, so I'm like, I get that she's feeling, and it's just gonna be, like you say, doubled with this other trauma that she's going through and stuff like that. Like, it might have hurt her anyways, but it would have been maybe a different pain or at a different level or whatever, right? But it's all of these combined that I was like, you can have this really... emotional moment, and
it takes away from Murphy's moment. Like, I don't like that.
Yeah.
Like, yes, the information is important, but just let her have this moment.
Exactly. And
he
again,
takes this moment away from her a couple of times. It's not, and like when it continues, she apologizes for being emotional. Like, you're going through grief. Like, let the woman have a fucking moment of grief.
I was gonna say, and yes, that's just Murphy. But again, whether it's, you know, Butcher or Dresden or whatever, you know, there's not that moment of, hey, Murph, it's okay. Like, it's fine. He just kind of lets her brush it off too. And it's like, exactly. It's like she doesn't need to apologize for that. Like,
but it's like,
it's in the privacy of her own home. It's something that's, you know, directly related to
Harry Harry pretending to study the sword so she can have a moment to cry. That's a nice way to support your grieving friend. Harry, like, instantly letting it brush off and be like, yeah, you shouldn't be crying. That's weird for you.
Exactly. He's like, I know that will make her uncomfortable, and we've seen a couple of those small moments with her already.
He's got, I don't think it's in this book, but he's got a quote where he says it's like, he's like, sometimes it can be frivolous to go and put an arm around someone while they're crying, but he's like, and sometimes it can be just as frivolous to pretend you don't notice. Right? Like, that's, I think comes up later in the books, but there are times.
Which is helpful for her particularly, because she doesn't.
I think
like
it's about her,
I was going to say, there are times when Murphy does appreciate that. She's like, I really don't want you to, I know you know, but I really like that you are not acknowledging it. I prefer that more.
So I know for, like, this one, like, I have a grandpa who I never met, and when he died, the only way we found out was, like, me and my sister and my dad Googling our own names and realizing that we'd been mentioned in his obituary, but, like, my dad hadn't seen him since he was, like, 16 or something like that, right? Me and Mackenzie had never met him, like, at all, but then here we are, like, he's survived by us, and we're like, the fuck he is? Like, who the fuck is this, right? So we're in his obituary, but it's like, oh, okay. Why? Like, it's just weird, but it's like, like, one of those things, like, there was zero relationship at all, and then it's just like, anyways, point is, that's just weird stuff like that, like, if you don't even have a relationship with someone, right? But Murphy's is like, you were married to him. Like, it is, like, you know, like, it's not like it just came out of nowhere, like, I don't know how she would have found out he was dead. If someone just sent an email to her and was like, oh, by the way, he's dead now, like...
People still read the newspapers back then.
Oh, right, maybe
she's looking at the obituaries is where she specifically came across
and that's quite a shock. If you're not expecting that, you're just looking through the paper and it's like, oh,
I know that.
Yeah, well,
because again, like Dresden says, you know, he looks 40-ish, 50-ish or whatever, which makes sense if Murphy is late 20s. Not because I think she's not quite 30 yet, so if he was, you know, a decade ahead of her, then he would only be around 40-ish, right? So it is young to have. Right. By the way, I did find the quote I meant, the Buffy one. She's like, oh, this is an encouragement talk? I thought it was a share my pain. So I was like, I get that sometimes. You go off on the wrong tangent. You're like, oh, I'm not supposed to be sharing mine with you. But he just kind of fouls it up there.
Back to that, like, where she apologizes for being a flake and being, like, emotional.
Yeah.
I kind of also wonder if it was to, like, set up that whole, like she's in an apologetic drunk mode because she's basically high and drunk at that moment.
Maybe.
Like, we've all met that person that's like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I'm drunk and I'm sorry. I'm such a drunk.
I've seen Jessica be that person.
No, not me.
I have stories.
Not me.
It's okay. I remember you laying on the floor on your sister's. You're so drunk you couldn't get off the floor.
I don't remember that at all. It didn't happen.
That's called blacking out.
No, that never happened. Yes. So, I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe some of it can just be chalked up to that or whatever. That maybe Dresden was just passing it off as that. He's like, I'm just not going to acknowledge it. She's just kind of whatever.
This bitch crazy.
Yeah.
So, anyways, ignoring how he's a bad friend, we do get his backstory.
Well, so she's like, did you lose your first love? And he's like, yeah. And then she's like, what was her name? And he's like, Lane. He's like, we were adopted by the same... She was your sister? And he's like, whoa. We were adopted by the same guy. We were not... I have no relatives. She was not my sister. But Murphy's like, wow, I really did just learn a lot about you, Dresden. And then I killed her.
And we're comparing?
Where were you adopted again?
Creepy old guy taking advantage of a young girl. Guy sleeping with his adopted sister. I don't know. It's like, I'll just... Yeah, no. But just like, Murphy just kind of blinked and looked at me. Wait, what? Yeah.
Yes, my adopted father adopted her as well. We're not related. And then he tried to get us into black magic with a little bit of human sacrifice. As you do.
As you do when you adopt a couple of orphans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Man, the system's fucked.
Right.
I didn't come up on any of the background checks.
Yeah, right.
It's got all this weird ritualistic torture device in the basement.
Mega warlock. Do not have puppies, kittens, or small children. So then we get we didn't try to get her too. He did get her. He just succinctly leaves it with burned. She's dead. Okay, thanks, Dresden. Doesn't really tell me what, but okay, thanks.
Right. So Murphy does eventually reveal that she's been having night terrors, and that's why she's resorting to this mix of alcohol and pills.
Yeah,
She almost seems to be exhibiting like a PTSD from Kravis's attack.
Yeah, for
Just really,
sure, I
like,
think. Not that I can speak, clinically or knowledgeably about that in any particular way, but yes, I'm going to say.
And outside of Kravos, it's just a scary life dealing with the supernatural. We know that she has supernatural cases that she doesn't need Harry for because she's just
She knows how to deal with trolls now. That was our first one. Trolls are old news. Or old hat.
And I think this was a really, really important moment with what he says, because she's able to rationalize that there's nothing that she could do, and that's what really scared her about the whole thing. But Dresden relates her experience to being raped.
Yes.
Like, that's very, very...
Yeah, loss of power,
like
used for somebody else's pleasure and amusement, and yeah.
Like, and I think this is like the really, like, the holy shit, like, Murphy is...
That'll definitely put it into perspective for a lot of people. Because,
Yeah.
you'd be like, oh, she's having bad dreams. But when, you suddenly think about, like, exactly, like,
That whole
how
sense of violation,
violated that way. You know what I mean? There is, I think, a good sort of allegory or whatever where, literally he's like, hey, went, like, sank his fingers into, like, her, right? So it's like, there was that whole thing of Kravos, like, going into Murphy, going into charity and doing the whole, right? It was like, yeah, you can feel, like, this whole very, like she says, right? She's like, I couldn't do, even if I'd known, I couldn't have done anything about it, really, to protect myself from that type of a supernatural attack or whatever, Like, I don't know, you could have tried to chop his head off immediately or something,
Right.
but shot him full of enough bullets that his body disintegrated, but...
This is a giant drop in power for somebody who's so strong. And to have that kind of, like, that experience would just be...
Murphy being Murphy, that she has worked her whole life. She's been in Aikido since she was 11, so obviously that was something she enjoyed, discovered she was good at, was something worth training to be good at, right? I mean, she may or may not wanted to have been a cop at 11 years old, but, and again, when she never grew past that 5-foot mark, again, right, I may be little, but I can defend myself. I can look after myself. I'm not, going to be taken by surprise. I'm not going to have some guy just randomly pick on me or, and then, like you say, her whole professional career of fighting to be in a tough career and be taken and be able to do the job. Like,
to
that's
be fair,
the other
though,
thing.
about the cop thing, like, we know that her father was a cop and that he killed himself while she was quite young, too, so... That's probably been, like...
Yeah,
it's just probably also been a part of it for the majority of the time anyways as well.
I was going to say it could have been because we know a lot of her family. Like, she's got brothers and uncles
Everyone
and
in the
things
family's
and
a
stuff
cop,
like
yeah.
that, just about, yes. So, I mean, like, yes, I was going to say it's very possible, she did want to be a cop since she was 11 or whatever, but it's not necessarily how or why she got started in the... But, but exactly, she has always done these things to be... self-sufficient and stronger and, more than what she looks, right? She's not just the stupid blonde cheerleader, She's like, go ahead, say that to my face. I will literally kick your ass, and we've seen her or will see her in other things where she does take on bigger and not just the supernatural baddies, but, like we see her training with her guys one day and there's like, just this young... He's not quite a rookie. I think he's still whatever. But, he's obviously, 6 foot and built and whatever. And she can just manhandle him on the mats because she's got the know-how of how to do that, right? So, yeah, she's made it very much that she is not as vulnerable as she would otherwise be given... all the things that,
Well, she's very vulnerable in this moment. What I think it does is, like, it shows just how courageous she is to be able to move forward from it. Like, she already takes the initiative by trying to get back on the case and move forward.
I was going to say what she says here, she's like, I know I'm not going to get past this unless I keep moving forward through it, so I can't just back out and stay away from all this scary stuff I've got to.
She is struggling through things.
Yeah, it's not just, again, the automatic... fictional character of it's fun. Yeah, exactly, right? And I mean, like, cause she says, because she goes off here to, because she has been, like, in her matching bathrobe, right? So she goes, which I'm like, I guess it's better than a bathrobe, and, like, who knows, maybe she had just some little nightie or nothing on under, but it's just kind of funny that I'm like, all she comes back in is, like, a t-shirt and baggy shorts. I was like, it's not really, I don't know, much more than the robe, but okay, whatever. But he's, right, like, he's looking at the pills and the booze and stuff like that, right? And she comes back in, she's like, I'm not suicidal. And he's like, really? Because mixing drugs and alcohol is a really good way to get it done. And, and then, this is where she's explaining just how bad it's all been, that it's like one doesn't work anymore and then the other doesn't work anymore. And now if I don't do both and, but yeah, she can recognize that it's not ideal and that it's not great. But again, that Dresden is at least kind of looking out for her there and trying to offer some sympathy and support, and her, like you say, recognizing and being like, and he acknowledges that on her afterwards too. He's like, she's right, like she's scared shitless, but she knows she needs to, get back on the horse or she'll never get over it. And he's like, I admire that. Like, I don't want to take that away. He's like, I don't really want to get involved in this situation because this is, but he's like, again, I understand where she's coming from. He's like, that's real courage. Like, that really is the fact that she does know how bad it, because like he says, he's like, I always do that, but he's like, at least I know I can hit the monster's back, he's like, Murphy has no such reassurance, so he's like, yeah, it's real. And that's the thing, it really is, again, that emotional strength as well as like her physical strength and stuff like that, so it's like, you pretty badass, Murph. You put the boots on.
I think it's very necessary character development.
Yeah, and then like you say, I think it was all really, but just felt almost a little shoehorned, like you say, a little contrived to have to throw the Elaine stuff in there as well. And then, oh look, hello, Elaine. It's like, gee,
a little bit of an afterthought,
weird.
maybe, is what it is. Like, oh yeah, I need to talk about Elaine a bit.
People have to care about Elaine, so I can choose Elaine.
It's too late to add her anymore in the first few books, other than to mention this dead love of his, but...
Yeah.
Unfortunately, though, I just don't care about Elaine, ever. Not now, and not in any future book.
Well, there you go.
You're a useless character, and we could have done without you.
You were allowed...
You were good for the backstory. You didn't need to be alive. You didn't need to be here in these books. Although, there could be a book one day she does something.
Maybe.
Hasn't yet, but maybe.
Maybe.
The only thing that I really like about Elaine is that Harry never bothered to tell them that she existed. He basically went... Well, this is a bit of... like
Harry never told Elaine she existed?
Harry never told the council when he went to go do his trial.
Yes.
And they were like, you fucking killed Justin. He never bothered to even say anything about Elaine. He's like, fuck you guys, I'm going to tell you any more shit. Like, he kept as many secrets as he possibly could, right? Like, we know, he didn't tell anybody that he got Bob. He didn't tell anyone there was Elaine. And at the time, he thought she was dead. So
I was
going to
say, he probably just figured, what is the point of trying to bring her? But yeah, you think there could have been something
I do
about...
like...
Well, it was me and her, and they ganged up on me.
Yeah. But I do like that, like, throughout all that, it shows Harry is a loyal motherfucker.
Yes. It
Good
does.
point. Yeah.
Yep.
It
so,
does.
yeah.
There you go. Well, I'm glad you have one thing you can commend Elaine for existing for.
Existing only to better a man. Whoa.
Yeah. Way to go, Jessica.
That's your life,
Thanks
Elaine. Elaine does not pass the Bechdel test.
Anyways, so they do finally move on beyond that. Yes, Murphy decides, like, okay, you're here for a reason. You obviously didn't show up to mourn my dead ex-husband you didn't know existed. So he's like, all right, I want some input on this. And again, I'm sure it's just for the sake of expediency in the book, but she's like, oh, this is the rule murderer. Like, you automatically know about this accidental death that would have nothing to do with SI because there's, again,
it wasn't called suspicious?
It's not even suspicious, let alone, like, a supernaturally suspicious. It's just an accident.
It's just sad. An old man got pushed down the stairs, okay?
Murphy just knows about every homicide ongoing case on the books.
She's a little bit anal about her job.
She is. Like I say, I'm sure it's just for the expediency of not having to explain everything else. But I thought that was kind of funny that she was like, oh, why are you looking into this? Isn't it an accidental death? I hear it's not. Oh, who told you that? Magical fairy. Oh. Like, you're being serious. Well, damn it. And this is, again, another growth point where Murphy doesn't give him any more shit on it. She doesn't push for more like in the other one, she would have been like, she's just like, okay, you know what? She's like, tell you what, if it is, bring me, and he obviously does the whole, like, why the fuck I'm not going to get you involved? And again, the pros and cons, like, I get Murphy, but I was like, really? Like, you are asking for, he talks about going out to world trouble. I'm like, really, Murphy's like, with this, like, power imbalance in the fairy realms I didn't really know about? Bring me in. It's like, I get, but if it's a fairy murder, it really doesn't fall under your jurisdiction, Murphy. You can't, what are you going to do? Put him in jail like the Loop Guru? Like,
Murphy's a loyal motherfucker, too.
She's loyal, but it's just kind of funny that
not
she's
my
like,
town.
Okay, if it turns out that a mortal, regular Joe Blow killed this guy, I will bring you in. But you know what? If it's fairy shit, I'm not. Right. I can tell you it's fairy shit, but I'm not, it's just, again, where she's like, but yeah, it turns out she does have some, she pulls up some crime scene photos.
Right.
And luckily, maybe there was something CPD missed. Oh, look, there's something CPD missed. This sticky goo.
The goo. Slippery goo.
Yeah. She's like, and then she has her whole, so apparently he didn't tell her everything about all the shit of how they carried out and when the day in grave peril, because she's like, I thought Never was like monsters only, like people can go there. Did I not tell you about me, Michael, and Thomas taking a jump through there a few months back ago? Yeah.
But she was like, all three of them were magical, so that maybe that's why she thought.
Maybe, but I mean, I guess then that still would constitute somebody going through. I don't know. Anyways, regardless. So, and I love this again. I'm like, for good or bad, whether it's just normal Murphy or again, we can say this is him being horrible, but she notices his hand and immediately starts like, the mothering and right. She's like, oh, you need, he's like, yeah, I don't have time to get it checked. And she immediately is like, oh my God, you idiot. Goes and gets her first aid kit, sits down, redresses it, sterilizes it. Is that too tight? Does that feel, It's like, I'm sorry, you're worried about me being suicidal. Here, let me patch you up. And I'm like, I don't know, maybe that could be a good thing. Sometimes we need that for ourselves. Let me take care of you and forget about my own shit for a moment, because I know how to do that. But yeah, it was still kind of funny.
This is Harry's world, and they're all just living in it.
Exactly. Exactly. So, yeah. So now they're like, well, maybe there is something to it. Maybe it isn't just a completely accidental. Maybe an old guy didn't just fall down the stairs.
Right, because his sleeves are all wet. And...
yeah. No, we just thought the rookie just, wanted to... It's homicide. I'm like, that poor rookie. I hope somebody goes and apologizes to him and be like, hey, you know what? Look, his sleeves are wet. There was goo.
Right.
It's not your fault it evaporated by the time the rest of us got there.
Right, so they do eventually conclude that the ectoplasm could have been from something from the Never or a portal into the apartment.
Yeah.
So one of the two.
So yeah, because they're like, nobody thought, it was a big, fancy, expensive apartment. There's no security, like, fuzzing out of the cameras to indicate magical use, and nobody saw anything on the security cameras, so nobody could have just accessed the building. And he's like, unless they just popped into the middle of it from nowhere and bypassed all the security cameras that way. Yeah. So, yes, there's all kinds of things. Oh, and she does ask a bit about Susan. Yeah. And we figure Susan is still alive because her articles are still coming in. But other than that, no, he hasn't talked to her. And again, Murphy, gives him some kudos, and she's like, if anybody can figure anything out, you can. Because you're a stubborn asshole. And, he's like, it's like banging my head against a wall. And she's like, well, knowing you, the wall would break first. But at the same time, it's her own kind of compliment to Dresden that, she has faith that if anything can save Susan, if there's some way out there, Dresden will find it or whatever. Right. So...
Murphy just ends up passing out while she's middle conversation with him.
She finally, which she does warn him, because he's like, this can wait till later, and she's like, yeah, no, I've already taken everything, I'm going to be done soon. So he's probably lucky she's, went as far as she could between, because especially when she was already kind of in the maudlin grieving stage, I'm like, actually, that's pretty impressive after grief, drugs, and booze to pull yourself back into cop mode and have some, like, actual, like, critical problem-solving thinking going, and then you're just like, okay, I'm done. Murph. So yeah, he tucks her up in her blanket, locks up what he can. I'm like, I couldn't do all 57 locks, but I was able to flip the doorknob one.
And that chain lock is a bitch from the...
Yeah, he can't do... Although you know what? He can do his Ventus Ruby-Test little windy. I'm sure he's got a little magnetic one. I was like, dude, you probably totally could have popped that little chain lock back in there. You just weren't trying hard enough.
Nope.
Yeah, so he heads back to his apartment, and he disarms his own words. He enters his home, and realizes that he is not alone. There's somebody there. And he's greeted by a woman who tells him he needs to change his words more often. Which makes me think, do they go stale?
You know what? I think they do. I think there is other...
Well, the sunlight comes and degrades it every day.
Well, sunlight degrades it. I was going to say, he does talk about some other places where they've been, because, like, way spoiler advance, but where he gets to where, like, the lighthouse tower, he talks about the fact that those things are still standing, so how powerful they must have been to still have any juice and refreshing. And also, I think I always took it a little bit more as, like, you need to change them once in a while, as it's like your password.
Yeah.
Harry, you're still using...
The one that was taught to us by Justin. Like, you've had a decade to learn a different way to make words.
You're still using Mr. Muggle 77. Like, you need to update that, Harry.
This is essentially like...
Now everybody knows Maggie's password.
I never had a pet named Mr. Muggles.
As we learned, this woman is Elaine, and she's basically like, bitch, I was able to dismantle this in a second, because it's the same password I used 10 years ago.
Yeah.
First one I tried.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So yes, while there is definitely the actual, I always took it as a bit more than that of like her saying you need to update. It's meaning
Like for me, when I change a
because she's
password,
like anyone could learn it eventually.
when I change a password, I just add a digit to it. That's the most I change it to. It goes from 7 digits to 8 digits to 9 digits. It's right, so I can still remember what it is, and I'm like, oh, this is
Until she gets past
wow.
that 10-digit mark, then she's fucked. Because asking to
that'll be
remember
rough.
anything more than like a birth date or a phone number ain't gonna happen.
I'm just adding like an exclamation mark on every time. It's fine.
She's
Like,
gonna,
is this
like-
one 2 or 3 at this
Okay,
time?
but see, you're not gonna. You only get 3 chances, so you'll have to do like exclamation mark, enter. Nope, another exclamation mark. Nope, no. Oh crap.
Yeah, it's rough. Okay, it's really rough. That's why I wish when like a website was like password is wrong. I'm like, can you tell me what the parameters were to create a password on your website? Because I don't know what password to start with. If you only need 8 letters for your password, then I'm gonna know which password to start with. But if your site requires 14 passwords, I'm gonna know which password to start with.
Then open up a new window and create account.
I should, but I'm
And
not
then
gonna
it'll
do
tell
that
you.
for every time
I
I
was
go to a
gonna
new
say, I was gonna
goddamn
say,
website.
for much as she says I'm useless and she has no use for me and she doesn't need me, I do still occasionally get the Mom, what's my password for this? Did you keep my copy of that? I need to know.
Well, because you know what,
I'm still
Tansenn
relevant.
Tansenn just recently signed me out of everything, so there's still things that I'm just like, I don't use this anymore.
Yes,
I
we
don't
know.
use email anymore. Like, I don't know. I don't care. I can use email on my phone. My laptop doesn't need email. Who cares?
Forgotten
Yeah,
all of
that was
that.
IT fuckery that didn't go well.
It's fine. There's just a couple things I'm just like, fuck it. I don't use this anymore.
Yeah, right.
I don't need this. But yeah.
You say that's like you find a spider in your bedroom once and you're like, I had to move. You know, you're just like, I just don't need that anymore. That's good.
Yeah. So yes, so he goes home. Elena's there. She let herself in. He's very stunned. Oh, sorry. Then he's like, "Hello, Elaine."
Yeah, he's too stunned to speak. Yes, they haven't actually had the discussion about the ward. She just said, I let myself in. I hope you don't mind. And he's still just standing there kind of gobsmacked. Yeah. And she comes over and goes up on tiptoe, but she doesn't have to go that far because she's a tallish woman. Kisses his cheek. Hello, Harry. Hello, Elaine.
And of course, you think this is gonna be Susan, right? Like a woman
At
in his
first,
thing,
you're
and
like-
blah, blah,
especially,
blah.
right,
He's
you're,
like,
like, talking
there
about
she was, a
Susan.
slender woman standing by my cold fireplace, all graceful curves and poised
Knew how to let
reserves.
herself in.
Knew to let herself in. and
Maybe
then-
because we were just talking, right? It's like we talked about Elaine, but then most recently we were just right. 'Cause she's like, "How is Susan? We know Susan's still alive. You can fix it." And like, oh, did Susan just come back? Because you're like, well, if she just disappeared, obviously we've got to get some update on Susan.
So yeah, so then the chapter ends with "Hello, Elaine," and you're like, "Whoa, I thought you were dead."
Da da da.
And of course, the first time you read this, you're like, "This is gonna be an important lady." Wow. No.
Not that Jessica has any biases or prejudices about.
I just maybe it is a discredit to Jim Butcher's writing of this one particular character, or maybe she was never meant to be anything useful, but she's not, and I don't like her. I don't care for her.
Yeah, there's always just that. There's always like somebody somewhere sometimes that
I think every role she plays in every book, easily give it to someone else. Who the fuck cares? Especially because you've got this established. I help every woman just cause.
Well,
like,
yeah,
yeah.
there's a little bit of that. Like I don't think I have a super fantastic. I'm not like Elaine is so cool, but I'm like I don't think I hate her as much as or dislike her or find her as useless as.
Kind of here nor there.
I'm like
with her.
again, I'm a little bit in this book. I was like, I see some of it. There are some pros and cons, and you're right. Like she's not. Again, she does pop up another time or two, and I'm like, yeah, I don't necessarily.
Never important
mind.
though. Anyone else could have filled her role.
Yeah,
She
maybe,
pops
but
up
I
after
was
this
going to say,
book.
but I was like, I don't necessarily mind that, at least what I recall now. Maybe when I go back and reread them through another time, I'll be like, wow, with a more analytical view, maybe it'll be like, yeah, you're right. But
Did you go out there like Elaine?
I don't.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
Because you agree with me. She's completely useless and unnecessary as a character. Other than the fact that every time he ever interacts with her, he's going against the council, which I do enjoy.
Well, there's some of that as well.
Like, they'll eventually talk about it.
But anytime you meet Harry, he's going against the council anyway, so really. But yeah, she's still not as bad as some. She doesn't quite fall into like the too stupid to live category.
No,
But
yeah,
she's not like a super wow.
she's just not a
It's not like the
necessary
first time
character.
you meet Thomas and you're like, I really want to see Thomas again.
No, it's-
even though he was kind of a dick and he did terrible things, but you're like, I really like Thomas.
When I
not
see her
that,
more
it's
as like her functionality is just to show how vindictive the fairy court is by using her.
Yeah.
Well,
too.
but yeah, again, there's just nothing about Elaine that couldn't be done by a different character.
Yes.
Is my only thing about it. You know, only Thomas can be Thomas. All the things that are given to Thomas promise, which we don't even know about yet. He
Yes.
has to be, you know, like his backstory is what it is. He's got to be.
I was
going to
say, because yes,
Murphy
you're right. Not
gotta
even
be.
the emotional, because like you say, you know,
Yeah, there's
his chivalry extends to all, not just because this is his first love. And I thought I killed you. Oh my god, I didn't. I can, you know, you're right. That does not make it
Because again,
enough to
because
be-
you could just have Lydia again. Like, it's just
Yeah.
not, you know?
Yeah.
There's just really not. Anything Elaine does doesn't matter.
Fair enough. Well, we will explore this more. We have a lot of book to go through.
This concludes our episode 9.6, Repercussions. Thank you for listening. You can find us online at freeflowrambling.com and McAnally's.ca. There we have links to our other podcasts, social media, and other fun tidbits. Please subscribe if you like what you're hearing, and please consider supporting us through Patreon to keep the magic alive and to see more content. We are Free Flow Rambling. Conjure by it at your own risk.